For years, Russian hypersonic missiles were presented as weapons that would completely change modern warfare. They were described as unstoppable, able to fly at extreme speeds while maneuvering in ways that made interception impossible. This narrative created fear and respect around the world, suggesting that traditional air defense systems were suddenly obsolete. However, once these missiles were used in real combat conditions, the reality proved far more complex and far less impressive than the propaganda suggested. Speed alone does not equal effectiveness. Hypersonic missiles are incredibly fast, but they still rely on launch platforms, guidance systems, and targeting data. If intelligence is weak or targets are poorly selected, even the fastest missile becomes inefficient. In several cases, hypersonic strikes were used against targets that did not justify such expensive weapons, raising serious questions about strategic value. Each launch costs millions of dollars, making widespread use unsustainable in long-term conflicts. Another major issue is that modern air defense is no longer based on a single system. Western-style defenses combine radar networks, satellites, early warning aircraft, and layered interceptors. When integrated properly, these systems reduce the advantages of speed by detecting launches early and tracking missiles throughout their flight. This demonstrated that hypersonic weapons are not magical tools, but part of a larger equation where coordination and intelligence matter more than raw velocity. Perhaps the biggest disappointment was psychological. Hypersonic missiles were expected to shock enemies into submission, but instead they became symbols of overconfidence. Rather than changing the balance of power, they highlighted the limits of relying on technological hype. In modern warfare, a weapon's true strength lies not in how fast it flies, but in how well it fits into a coherent, adaptable military strategy. Russian air defense systems were long portrayed as impenetrable shields, capable of detecting and destroying any aircraft or missile long before it reached its target. Systems like long-range surface-to-air missiles were advertised as superior to Western alternatives, creating the impression that Russian-controlled airspace was essentially untouchable. This reputation was carefully built through military parades, export marketing, and controlled demonstrations, but real-world combat revealed serious weaknesses that propaganda had hidden. One of the most critical problems was coordination. Modern air defense does not function as a single launcher or radar. It requires a fully integrated network that connects sensors, command centers, and interceptor units in real time. In practice, gaps appeared between detection and response, allowing adversaries to exploit timing, terrain, and electronic warfare. When systems failed to share data efficiently, even advanced missiles became slow, blind, or ineffective. Electronic warfare played a decisive role in exposing these vulnerabilities. Jamming, decoys, and drone swarms confused radar operators and overwhelmed systems designed for older threats. Many air defense units struggled to distinguish real targets from false ones, wasting valuable interceptors or failing to respond at the right moment. This showed that technology alone cannot compensate for limited training or outdated operational concepts. Another issue was survivability. Air defense systems themselves became targets. Once their radar positions were identified, they were vulnerable to precision strikes. Relocating these systems quickly proved difficult, reducing their effectiveness over time. An air defense network that cannot adapt or move becomes predictable, and predictability is a fatal weakness in modern warfare. Ultimately, the failure was not that Russian air defense systems were useless, but that they were oversold. They were designed for a different era of warfare. Against adaptive enemies using intelligence, coordination, and electronic disruption, the myth of an invincible shield collapsed under the pressure of reality. For decades, Russian tank doctrine was built on the belief that mass and firepower could overwhelm any opponent. Thousands of tanks, heavy armor, and powerful guns were seen as the ultimate symbols of battlefield dominance. This approach worked in earlier eras when wars were decided by large formations clashing head-on. However, modern warfare has fundamentally changed, and the battlefield has become far less forgiving for armored vehicles that rely on numbers instead of survivability and awareness. One of the most serious weaknesses exposed was protection. Many Russian tanks were designed with an emphasis on frontal armor, while top and side protection received less attention. Modern anti-tank weapons attack from above or strike weaker angles, turning heavy tanks into vulnerable targets. Even relatively small, Mobile infantry units equipped with advanced missiles were able to neutralize tanks that once would have dominated entire battlefields. Quantity offered no protection when each vehicle could be destroyed with precision. Situational awareness was another major issue. Older tank designs often rely on limited optics and outdated sensor systems, restricting the crew's ability to detect threats in complex environments. In contrast, modern Western doctrine emphasizes digital networking, thermal imaging, and constant communication with infantry, drones, and air support. Without this integration, tanks become isolated and blind, unable to respond quickly to fast-moving threats. Crew survivability also highlighted the flaws of this doctrine. Design choices that prioritized compact size and autoloading systems increased the risk of catastrophic explosions when tanks were hit. Losing both the vehicle and its trained crew at the same time dramatically reduced long-term effectiveness. Training new crews takes far longer than producing new tanks. Ultimately, the reliance on quantity over quality reflected outdated thinking. Modern warfare rewards coordination, protection, and information dominance. Tanks are no longer kings of the battlefield on their own. Without adaptation, mass becomes a liability rather than a strength. The most serious weakness revealed was not found in steel, engines, or missile range, but in the thinking behind how these weapons were used. Military hardware cannot operate in isolation, it depends on doctrine, logistics, and integration. When these supporting systems fail, even advanced weapons lose their effectiveness. In this case, outdated doctrine repeatedly collided with the realities of modern, fast-moving warfare. Modern combat requires seamless coordination between ground forces, air support, intelligence units, drones, and electronic warfare. Instead, operations often showed fragmented command structures where units acted without real-time information or mutual support. Decisions were slow, communication was inconsistent, and battlefield awareness suffered. This lack of integration meant that weapons were deployed reactively rather than strategically, reducing their overall impact and increasing losses. Logistics proved to be another critical failure point. Advanced weapons require a constant flow of fuel, spare parts, trained technicians, and secure supply lines. When logistics fall behind, even the most powerful systems become immobile or unusable. Poor planning led to shortages, abandoned equipment, and reduced operational tempo. A weapon that cannot be maintained or resupplied quickly becomes a liability rather than an asset. Training and adaptability also played a major role. Modern warfare evolves rapidly, demanding flexible tactics and well-trained personnel capable of independent decision-making. Rigid command styles and limited training cycles made it difficult to adjust to unexpected threats such as drone warfare, precision strikes, and electronic disruption. Enemies who adapted faster gained a decisive advantage, regardless of who possessed more or heavier weapons. Ultimately, the failure of doctrine and integration exposed a fundamental truth of modern warfare: technology alone does not win wars. Success depends on how well weapons are embedded within a coherent system of strategy, logistics, training, and command. Without that foundation, even the most advertised, super weapons, were reduced to expensive symbols rather than decisive tools. Modern warfare has proven again and again that victory is not decided by who owns the biggest missile or the heaviest tank, but by who understands the battlefield better and adapts faster. The idea of an invincible weapon belongs to an older mindset where technology alone was expected to guarantee dominance. Today's conflicts show that no single weapon can operate independently or deliver decisive results without a larger system supporting it. Intelligence has become the foundation of success. Satellites, drones, surveillance aircraft, and real-time data analysis shape every major decision. Knowing where the enemy is, what they are planning, and how they move is far more valuable than simply possessing powerful hardware. Forces that control information can avoid ambushes, strike precisely, and minimize losses, even when they have fewer weapons or soldiers. Adaptability is equally critical. Modern battlefields change rapidly as new threats emerge, from drone swarms to electronic warfare and cyber attacks. Armies that rely on rigid plans and fixed doctrines struggle when those plans collapse. Flexible forces that empower commanders and soldiers to adjust tactics in real time gain a decisive advantage. Adaptation turns setbacks into opportunities, while inflexibility turns strength into weakness. Integration ties everything together. Weapons, intelligence, logistics, and command structures must function as a single system. A missile strike is only effective if it is based on accurate intelligence, coordinated with other units, and supported by logistics. When these elements work together, even ordinary weapons become powerful. When they don't, even advanced systems fail. The lesson is clear: wars are not won by super weapons alone. They are won by strategy, awareness, and the ability to evolve faster than the enemy. In the modern era, thinking smart beats hitting hard. History consistently shows that the idea of an unbeatable weapon is more myth than reality. Every era has produced its own version of the war-winning invention, from battleships and strategic bombers to tanks and missiles. Each time, initial success created the illusion of invincibility, only for opponents to adapt and find ways to counter it. Modern warfare has accelerated this cycle, making the lifespan of any technological advantage shorter than ever before. What truly decides outcomes today is strategy. Strategy determines how resources are allocated, how forces are positioned, and how risks are managed. A well-designed strategy can allow a weaker force to defeat a stronger one by exploiting timing, terrain, and enemy mistakes. Without sound strategy, even the most advanced weapons are used inefficiently, wasted on low-value targets, or deployed too late to matter. Intelligence is the second decisive factor. Real-time information allows commanders to see the battlefield clearly, anticipate enemy actions, and strike where it hurts most. Intelligence reduces uncertainty, which is the greatest enemy in war. An army that sees first and understands faster gains the initiative, forcing the opponent to react rather than act. This advantage often outweighs differences in firepower or numbers. Adaptability ties everything together. No plan survives contact with the enemy. Forces that can learn quickly, adjust tactics, and innovate under pressure gain momentum as conflicts drag on. Adaptability turns failure into feedback and surprise into opportunity. In contrast, rigid systems break when reality no longer matches expectations. Together, strategy, intelligence, and adaptability form the real source of military power. Weapons are tools, not solutions. They amplify good decisions but cannot replace them. In the end, wars are won by minds that think better, not machines that look stronger.